Thank you for joining us in this free online workshop. Now, a lot of you have told me that you feel stuck when it comes to gigging. Some of you don't know how to make the step from free to paid gigs. Others can't figure out how to break out of their hometown and tour regionally or nationally. And some of you know about house concerts. I know a lot of you are actually doing this, but a lot of you don't really know, haven't done that before, don't know how to take the first step or to find hosts, and we're gonna talk a lot about that. And no matter what problems you're facing in the realm of gigging, the information we're going to be sharing in this workshop will help you take the next step in your career. That's really what it's all about. Now, house concerts can work for almost anyone, and Fran will talk a bit about that. But for the most part, they're a great way to build a deeper connection with your fan base, to break into new markets, and to make some extra money in between shows at traditional venues or make it your main source of income. At the end of this workshop, you're going to have everything you need to go and book your first house concert. That's our primary goal, and more. If you ask questions, we will answer them for you. But before we get started, I wanted to let you know that we have a special gift for everyone who stays all the way to the end of the webinar, so make sure you stick around. Now, this workshop is brought to you by the New Artist Model, and the New Artist Model helps you visualize your plan and drive your success. On this webinar tonight is an example of the kind of information that you get, and I'm very excited to be joined right now by Fran Snyder. How you doing, Fran?
I'm doing great, Dave. Thank you.
Fran is a bit of a jack of all trades. He's a singer and songwriter who spent 20 years in the industry touring, writing, and recording. He's also a huge driving force behind the house concert movement. You could definitely count on Fran to be the world expert in this area. He's developed a method for booking, playing, and hosting house concerts. And his music career is really a testament that it works. And on top of all that, he founded Concerts in Your Home, which he's going to tell you about, which is a network that helps musicians, hosts, and venues connect and be successful. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Fran Snyder.
And the crowd goes wild. Thanks, everybody. It's great to be here. There's so much going on in the world of house concerts right now. It's a really exciting time to be talking about it. A little background about me is I was a late bloomer. I started playing gigs after college. I got a business degree and played music throughout, but never really started playing professionally until afterwards. And I was in Florida. I started playing the beaches and the bars and the restaurants, and you know, doing okay, becoming sort of a big fish in a small pond here. But I was having to sort of cater to what people wanted to hear. And my passion was writing and creating a musical legacy and creating relationships based on the stuff that I was writing, not the stuff that other people had written. So it was frustrating. And even though I was able to pay the bills, I kept finding myself in rooms where I didn't respect the people I was playing for, and they weren't showing a whole lot of respect for me unless I was leading the latest round of Brown Eyed Girl. So I started exploring, you know, how do I get to the next step, and I wound up on the college circuit, which was a step up financially, but it also required so much investment to really get a toehold in that market. And what I found though was that the gigs were not necessarily any better. And colleges sometimes are really nice rooms, an opulent hall, and a decent crowd. But a lot of times I was in the lunchroom cafeteria at noon, or in, you know, what was, you know, the Rathskeller, the pub on campus, or playing for, you know, despite the fact that the colleges had paid $1,200 to have me play there, there was like 5 kids. And so, you know, I could say, well, you know, upside is I made, you know, $250 a person, but it didn't, you know, didn't change the fact that I played for 5 people in a big room, lots of empty seats. And it wasn't until I discovered house concerts that I realized why I play music and I play music because I want to connect with people. And I love to write, and I love to create, and I want to put myself in places where I can put those creations in front of an appreciative crowd, where I don't have to win them over by dancing and doing crazy stuff and getting everybody to drink shots. So sort of discovered them by accident and talked a friend of mine into doing one, and it was a big success. And it had felt like forever since I'd experienced a pin drop audience. You know, when I'm not singing or talking, there was silence, and they were waiting for the next thing, and it was such a shock, a wonderful shock to my system, that I said, this is it. This is why I do music. And that doesn't mean I'm going to check out altogether and only do house concerts, but I want to make this a big part of what I do. And this was the early 2000s, and the internet was just kind of getting going. And around 2005, I wanted to, really lean into this. And I was looking on Google for house concerts, and I kept finding bad information, out-of-date information. People were making lists and never updating them. And I said, somebody needs to fix this problem. And when I realized how much work it was going to be to create something worthwhile for people to visit, something that would inspire people and connect people in a great way, I had to find a way for it to pay for itself. And that's how it turned into a business. And we've been doing this since 2006. We're coming up on our 10th year, and we do almost 2,000 events per year. We even do a house concert festival every spring. So there's a lot going on. It's a really fun time, and I'm excited to say that I did my first European tour this summer by doing a handful of house concerts in Germany and France. So the sky's the limit. These little tiny shows can lead to really big things, and I'm excited to talk about great ways for artists to get started where they live and to start getting their fans to solve their touring problems.
Fantastic. Well, Fran and I have talked a bit, and we're going to be breaking down a few things that Fran has learned in his many years of playing and organizing house concerts for you. And we're really going to talk about three main points: how to get started with house concerts, how to put on a successful house concert, and what all the variables are there, and how house concerts can fit in with the rest of your career. So, with no further ado, let's get started. How do you get started with a house concert?
All right. Well, I think the first thing is you've got to own the responsibility of delivering a great show, because now you're not playing for random people in a bar who have other things to do if you're not killing it. So you have to sort of make a commitment to be the absolute best that you can be, and beyond that, you've got to create materials, namely videos and CDs, but mostly videos in terms of presenting what you are like, or what you could be like in somebody's living room or house. So let's talk briefly about what exactly is a house concert, because I think it's important to realize sort of the mechanics, the basic mechanics of it, and where these things can trip you up or serve you. So number one, a house concert is a private event in someone's home for a suggested donation. And the way we do them, we always encourage it to be a listening room type of affair. So if you are in the world of punk or indie, you may hear the word house shows a lot more often than you hear house concerts. And we realize that bands have to do what they can to make a living, but we make a distinction with house concerts because the word concerts really emphasizes what we're about, and that is creating an atmosphere where a talented artist can be heard. And because of the nature of house concerts, if you're playing in somebody's house, if you have the event turn into more of a party or a rock and roll show with a mosh pit, you're not only asking for trouble for yourself, but you could actually be jeopardizing the safety of the people who own the home. So it doesn't have to be exclusively acoustic acts and singer-songwriters. But there is a challenge for bands, any group that's going to have backline or a full drum kit or a lot of members. You're going to limit the number of opportunities that are available to you. And just the basic math of it is anybody can fit a single or duo act in their living room. But when you get beyond that, some living rooms will get to the point where there's no room for audience. So that's it's not exclusively for acoustic acts, but if you're in that realm, if you can strip what you do down to a couple of pieces, you're going to have a much easier time finding opportunities to play house concerts. To get started, so I mentioned, you've got to have some great tunes, you got to put on a great show, but you need video. If you look at the responsibilities of a house concert host, they're cleaning their house, rearranging their furniture, begging their friends to come hear an act that they probably have never heard before, collecting money on behalf of that act, and at the end of the show, giving all that money to the artist. So as you can imagine, this is not, it's not like a club that needs to fill 5 nights a week and they're happy to take chances once in a while. House concert hosts are developing a reputation. They want to make it easy for themselves, and so they do that by booking the best artists that they can. And if they have to book somebody that they've never seen before, that artist better have some decent video. And what I mean by decent video doesn't mean it has to be a 3-camera shoot or fancy, but it has to be a good representation of what you would do in their living room, and they've got to be able to see your face. And we want to capture you. We want to see you at your best. And if you can include anything that shows a little bit of personality, whether you're cracking a short joke to set up the song, anything like that does wonders to pull people into your music and get them to pay attention to what you're doing. Please, oh please, don't strum a 4-bar pattern for 16 measures as people are going out of their mind waiting to find out if you can sing. So to get started, you need materials, but you also you also need to have a story. Why do you want to play in somebody's house? That you need to get beyond the fact that you need money and you need a free place to stay if you're on the road. You've got to look at what you do not as something that needs to be presented as a favor. I need a favor from you. We're coming through. We need a place to play. But what if you flip that around and say, you know what, I do a really great show, and I'm willing to play this in an exclusive way in your living room for just you and your friends and people that you know, and create a remarkable evening that everybody will talk about for years. So if you put it that way, you're really working off your strengths. And if you have a story in terms of you're wanting to get closer to your fans, you are wanting to create new experiences, you're wanting to build a fan base in different regions. If you want to create a story that's going to appeal to your friends and fans, and the last thing that you need, I think, an easy way to show them how to do it. And that's one of the things that you're going to get in the free guide after this session. There's going to be a lot of tools in there. We'll get into one of the formats, which is called 10-10 concerts. But the idea is you create an expectation and a situation where your friend is not going to let you down. If you're a touring artist, you know that Saturday night is the big money night, and house concerts on Saturday nights need to be a big show. If you're an artist, and when I say big, I mean 25 to 35 people, depending on your stature and your particular needs. But if you need 25 to 35, you don't want to have a first-time host putting that together for you on a Saturday night if you're driving 400 miles to get there. So what we encourage artists to do is teach their fans to start small and do it on a weeknight when you're coming through town or in the town that you live. If you create opportunities where a small show can still be helpful to you, you can allow a new host to sort of take baby steps and succeed the first time and be excited enough to do it again, whether it's 6 months later or a year later, or they might even turn into a host because they love it so much. So I think that's a pretty good overview of what you need to get started.
How do you know when you're ready, you know, as a band or artist to do a house show? How do you get your head around that when you're ready?
Yeah, so I'm going to keep driving home the term house concert because I hear house show and house party thrown around quite a bit, and again, you can use whatever words you want, but I like emphasizing house concert because that's such a big part of what makes house concerts so special is the listening aspect, and I think it's important to market it, to sell it as a concert, so that you're going to have a host selling it the right way to their friends. So how do you know you're ready? Well, how do you know you're ready for anything? You know, you see people on American Idol all the time, or The Voice, who think they're ready, and I think they usually form that opinion because they only listen to people who like them. So I think finding out if you're ready, there are ample ways to do that, but it all involves giving it a shot, you know. And I think if you start reaching out to your fans with a story, with a good video, and they're not responding, then that's a clear signal that you need some more compelling music or a more compelling presentation of what you have. But you just have to give it a shot. You got to put it out there and see if it resonates.
Okay, I mean, it's like most everything that we find when we work with indie artists is don't be hesitant to try, but don't necessarily shoot too big right off the bat. Mm-hmm. Start small and figure it out, and then go from there.
Yeah, let me just add one more thing to that. There's an aspect of house concerts we didn't really talk about yet, and that is how personal they are. And when you're a guest in somebody's home, you've got to be on that whole time, not just the hour that you're playing. Or, you know, typical house concert is 2 sets. You have like 2 40-minute sets and an intermission. But, you know, in the intermission, you need to be talking to people. Before and after the show, you need to be talking to people. And if you're staying over, you need to be a nice guy, you know, until you get into your room and get on Facebook and yell at your favorite politician. You need to be sweet and you know, avoiding political discussions as much as you can. So there's an aspect of house concerts that some artists will never be ready for. Some people are just not that comfortable being a guest in somebody's home, especially overnight. Not that you have to stay at a house concert overnight, but that's one of the big selling points. One of the big benefits of playing house concerts is that you get free lodging, 9 times out of 10. So it's kind of like a blind man dating a supermodel. You just, you know, you might get along great, but you're never going to, you know, realize the full value of what you have if you can't take a look at Cindy Crawford or Giselle or whoever. So that's my point there is you've got to be ready not just as a musician, but as a person to be that exposed, that close to an audience. So how to do a successful house concert? Well, everybody's got to define success on their own terms. And there's 3 things that I really look for in you know, to define, you know, what a good house concert is number 1, you know, did I play well? Did people have a good time? That's one aspect of it. You know, was it a good show? But another part of it is a room that is full or feels full. All right, you know, you can be, you know, having the gig of your life at a club, you know, and just killing it and playing at your best. But if there's 3 people in the audience and 97 empty seats, it's really tough to call that a great gig. And people really, there's nothing that sucks the energy out of a room like a bunch of empty chairs. So I think that's one aspect of it. And a full room could be 10 people if it's in the right place. But the room should feel full for me to feel like, you know, we maximized what the house concert can be. And then finally is good money. There are a couple of things that this is not unique to house concerts, but house concerts, typically the artist gets paid by suggested donation. And anything other than that, if you do tickets or paying in advance, funneling the money in some electronic way, or even by written checks, if that money is going through the host, you're making the host liable for withholding. You're making them liable for doing a commercial activity in their home. And so you want to create a situation where it's easy for the host to encourage everyone to donate without actually accepting the money for you. So I think it's really important. We talk about this. We have a free house concert guide, not the one that you're going to get for free at the end of this seminar, but if you go to concertsinyourhome.com, at the footer, at the bottom of every page, there's a thing that says free house concert guide, and that is for hosts, and that is something that you can give away to all your fans when they do a show for you. They'll have a clear outline of how to do the best job they can for you. And one of the things, or I'll mention a few things. Number one, having a big donations bowl, having it near the entrance, having a big sign, suggested donation, $10 to $15, $15 to $20. Make it a range so that you're honoring the spirit of the suggested donation. And then making sure that the host is selling it, promoting it as a suggested donation event as opposed to a party, because people aren't used to paying money to go to a party at somebody's house. Mm-hmm. So the more prepared your host is, and the more prepared you are to make up whatever deficiencies they lack. Maybe they didn't do the big jar. Maybe they're saying, hey, let's make sure the artist gets a few bucks for gas money. And now you've gone from being a professional to being some pauper asking for gas money after your gig. And some hosts don't realize that can be an insult to a professional artist. And so you need to be ready to, crack a joke about it, or say, listen, this is how I make my living. I'm really glad that you guys are here. Again, the suggested donation was 10 to 15. That is not the same thing as buying a CD. You can do either one or both. Or I'm sorry, not either one, but you know what I mean. You want to make that distinction so that people don't just say, well, I bought a CD, I don't need to make a suggested donation. So as a professional, you want to be ready to handle that if the host slips up on the collection of money. And the same thing can happen at a club, right? You never know if that doorman's getting you every dollar you're supposed to. The regulars are getting in for free. He goes to the bathroom without saying anything. And so house concerts are no exception. You're not going to get an argument over 10 or 20 bucks missing, but you want to be prepared to earn your living, and that includes watching the money.
So you have that conversation with the host at a time?
Yes, you have the conversation, you reinforce it. I always send them a link to we have the printed signs, or the PDFs of signs that they can print out at home. By the way, if you haven't printed out your signs yet for the concert, we agreed on a suggested donation of 10 to 15. Here's the link. Download it, print it, and that way you don't have to do it at the last minute with a Sharpie. So, and again, that's something people can get for free off the website. You don't have to join anything. It's just there in the resources. So, but yeah, whatever you can do to prepare that host, give them that guide, give them the tools that they need, and check in with them, and in terms of how their RSVPs are coming along, and that kind of thing.
I know some folks have asked about kind of the rig and the sort of the logistics of the room, setting up the room, the kind of gear that you might bring. Can you talk just a little bit about that, the sort of logistics of the show itself?
Yeah, I think again, if it's a house concert, less is usually more. So we see some full bands break it down to a snare and brushes for the drummer, and an acoustic bass, or just a little bass amp, and then acoustic guitars, and maybe one mic that they'll share if there's a couple of singers, whatever. But less is more, because part of the appeal of house concerts is being close to the band, and the more gear you have, the more it tends to push people back. So you want them leaning in to listen. You don't necessarily want to blow their hair back with the audio. For me, I think another important thing is you have to gauge the strength of your voice. If you're an acoustic player, you probably know this situation really well, where your acoustic guitar might be really loud, and after singing 4 or 5 songs acoustically, you're wearing your throat out. And so, for me, if I'm playing in a room that has really good acoustics, like hardwood floors, high ceilings, and if it's a small crowd of like 20, 15 people or less, I almost always play unplugged. If I can get close enough to them to where I don't have to dig too hard, there's just something really magical about doing it unplugged if you can. But if your voice is sore, if your voice isn't strong, you want to be at your best. And if you need to take a microphone out to be at your best, then you should do that. And, a little PA, there's so many great little PAs now that you can bring for house concerts. I often bring one of those little AER amps that has a guitar input and a microphone input, and that's it. And that's all you need. Just a little extra so that you're not losing the nuance in your voice. You're having to push on the guitar or on your voice, and you're just not playing your best. You lose all your dynamics that way.
Right. If you don't mind, talk a little bit more about the relationship with the host and the issue of whether you're going to stay with the hosts. How do you approach that?
Okay.
And the pros and cons of that, if you will.
Yeah, I think artists have to learn to make a distinction in their fan base. I come at it from the point of running a community of house concerts, and we're kind of like eHarmony for house concerts. There's some safety built into having a network, right? So we have let's say we have a 22-year-old girl who's an artist on our site going to play somebody's house, and it's a single man who's in his 40s. That can be a little awkward, and we within the community we can provide the fact that this host has 5 or 6 recommendations in their profile from guys and girls and solo acts, and he's never had an incident. That way that girl can feel much more comfortable about playing his house. We always encourage women to travel in pairs, but everybody's got to be careful out there, whether you're at somebody's house or at a hotel. So vigilance is not something that's exclusive to house concerts. But if you're playing mostly bars, rowdy bars, and if that's where you're building your mailing list, there's going to be a little more risk in your crowd than if you're building your list by playing house concerts, right? You're going to get to know people who sign up on your mailing list. And I'll talk about, at the end of the booklet that they're going to download, at the end of it there's a sample mailing list where you add an extra box for people to tell you whether they're interested in house concerts, whether they might host you or attend your house concert if you play nearby. So it's a matter of creating sort of a special list of people that you want to approach if the opportunity arises. But with the networks that are out there, whether it be HomeRoots, homeroots.ca, and concertsinyourhome.com, there's a certain level of safety sort of built in, and we encourage people to if you have concerns, have a talk, friend those people on Facebook, check out what they're posting, have conversations, get to know them before you drive a couple hundred miles to get to their place.
Great. Okay,
I was gonna say, and you can always have options. If you get to the house, and you're like, okay, I'll do the gig, but I definitely don't want to stay here. And that might not be a security thing. That might just be like it's cat infested, roach infested. Again, this stuff can happen in hotels and it can happen in people's homes, and it's good to have options. If you have a friend that lives 60 miles away, or a friend who's coming to the show, you don't have to stay at the host's house. And it's and there's always couch surfing and Airbnb, and worst comes to worst, you go stay at the nearby hotel. You don't owe anybody sleeping in their house just because you did a house concert. It's a benefit they can provide, but it doesn't have to be part of the equation.
How do you fit playing house concerts, not house shows, how do you consider that as an element of your career? How do house concerts fit in with more traditional gigging, and how do you view this in terms of both your exposure and your revenue opportunities?
Yeah, I'm really glad that you brought this up, Dave, because it's, from my vantage point, I see a lot of activity all around the world, and I see some friction points that I think need to be addressed. And number one is house concerts can be so good, they can be really addictive, and we see some artists who say, you know what, that's all I want to do. I'm not messing with clubs anymore. I have a better time, I make better money, and I just meet better people when I play houses. And believe me, I understand that. But I think as an artist, if you want to have a long career, I think you're selling yourself short if you check out and say, you know what, this is all I'm going to do. I think playing venues can be fun. It allows you to do bigger shows. It allows you to work, with a light show, with different elements. It can bring out different parts of you as a performer, as an artist, and it allows you to get publicity, because very few papers want to cover house concerts because those are private events. So people who read about it can't go, generally. And although it is becoming the Wild West a little bit on that front, where some hosts do get a little relaxed and promote their house concerts in a public way, we see hosts get into trouble by doing that. So if you're telling your friends, hey, we're not going to have a big show unless you put posters around town and invite strangers to your house, then just you are putting your fan or your friend at risk by doing that. So that's why it's better to encourage people to do small stuff when you need it the most, as opposed to trying to turn a house concert into a venue. And then the other side of that is there are some wonderful, wonderful listening rooms that we don't want to see go out of business. And it's not so much the competition for audience as it is the competition for artists. And when we see the A-list folk artists who are turning away playing the 200-seat venue that they can fill because they would rather play the 100-seat house concert and make more money. To us, I think that's a dangerous thing, and it's I think it can do as much harm as it does good. And I think we are going to sell our touring infrastructure short if everybody checks out to do house concerts. So what I want, again, as an advocate of smaller shows, is for artists to be able to develop a fan base in an area without going broke, without having to have a record company bribing radio stations to get airplay so that you can have an audience at the club. But you can do it organically by playing one little house concert at a time and building a mailing list, so that when you do have enough people on your mailing list, you can go play that club and fill it, because that's the only way you're going to make money at a club, is when there's a good audience. So it's not quite a tangent, but I want to kind of just color in the lines on that, because we have an infrastructure that's already struggling in terms of public venues, and house concerts can actually be a tool to support them rather than take away from them. But in terms of from the artist's perspective, I think that the biggest thing that house concerts can do, well, there's a bunch, but again, if you are willing to embrace house concerts, the small house concerts, as a way to engage your fans and to help them fix or solve your touring problems, that is, that Tuesday night in Des Moines, Iowa, when you're going from Chicago to Montana, when you are going to have a night off and you're going to lose money because you don't have a gig, that is where house concerts are magical, as a free place to stay, to get fed, captive audience. You don't have to spend 30 hours on Facebook promoting the show. You just show up and kick ass and make friends and rinse and repeat next time you come back through that area. So I like to see artists use house concerts to fill those gaps and also to engage their fans. What we see, Dave, at concerts in your home, our artists consistently tell us that some of the biggest funders of their Kickstarter campaigns are house concert hosts. These people fall in love with artists. They, if they're willing to rearrange their furniture and beg their friends to come see a guy they've never seen before, you bet they're willing to kick in $50, $100. We've seen some give $1,000 or more to Kickstarter campaigns. So, and that doesn't mean they're all rich, but they love music that much. And if you start connecting with people like that, you think of this was something I started developing about 8 years ago, and the opportunity to build a market where I can fly to New Jersey and play 3 house concerts, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and fly home. I can fly to Seattle and go do 3 or 4 shows in that area and fly home. And and I might not make a ton because of the travel, but what I'm doing each time is I am actually making money. I'm not losing money, but I'm building an audience. And if I do that over a couple of years' time, I can eventually get to the point where I'm playing venues. And worst comes to worst, if it doesn't really build, but you just have these people who fall in love with your music and they want you to come by every year, what a great legacy. What if you had 25 places in the world where you can go play 2 or 3 house concerts over 3 or 4 days' time? What if you twice a month you can do a long weekend and make money and have an amazing time? So that's a vision that can be self-sustaining, and help you grow and fill those gaps when you need them most.
All right. So you've talked a bit about connecting with the audience, and when you play a traditional show, you've got a combination of people that you drove to the venue, fans that you brought to the venue, and what the promoter did, or people who just showed up. So you get this sort of mix. At a house concert, are you always relying on the host to bring the audience, or are you bringing your fans as well? And what's the relationship there between how do those folks in that room, how do you get them on your list if you didn't bring them there? What's that dynamic like?
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought that up, because again, in the urge to be big, we have so many house concert hosts who think that, we call this the mansion effect. It's like the first time they go to a house concert, they see 30 people there, and they go, oh my God, we would love to do this, but our house isn't big enough, or we don't know enough people. We see a lot of people check out on the idea of house concerts because their only experience with it was that it was huge. And so a lot of hosts, let's say that they say, okay, this is big, but I think we can do it. And then they're shooting for 30 people, and then 3 days before the show, they've got 5 RSVPs, and they're panicking. A lot of people say, yeah, maybe, but people don't want to RSVP these days. So they won't know till the day of how many people are coming. And what will happen is they will ask the artist, do you know anybody in this area who you can invite? Please blast, we need your help filling seats, or else you're not going to have enough people here. And there are some hosts who over the years have developed the habit of telling the artists, put us on your calendar, on your tour page, and here's our email address, to have people email us. The more the merrier, because we can't fill the room on our own. And that is a problem of trying to be too big too soon. And what we've seen happen is if there is no filter, if I can go to Dave's website and see that he's playing a house concert in St. Petersburg, and I email the host and I go, I want to come. And they say, great, come on down, here's my address. That is a public show. And we encourage all house concerts to be private, because if it's public, then you got to worry about ASCAP and BMI. You've got to worry about whether homeowner's insurance is going to cover it if somebody trips and falls. So there's all these little things that can, it's not going to happen every time. It's rare that it does, but we see it where we've had house concerts get shut down because somebody complained, and they did some research, and they find out, hey, this guy's treating his house like a venue. This is a residential area. This doesn't fly. So here's what we recommend. We tell artists, list the show on your tour calendar if the hosts want you to, and say house concert, St. Petersburg, 8 p.m. Email me if you would like to have an invitation. Now you are vetting that guest for the host. And you can forward that email to the host and say, hey, this is John Schwartz, a friend of mine, and he and his wife would like to come. Can you come? Yes, of course. Any friend of yours is a friend of mine. Now you've got a dialogue. Now you've got something where everybody in the room is connected in some way. They're a friend of a friend of the artist, and it's not a public show. But what we don't want you to do is say, house concert, St. Petersburg, here's the host's email address. So you want to be vetting it. You don't want to be sending every drunk who ever signed up on your mailing list to somebody's house. Even if it's going to mean more dollars in your pocket, if you care about your fans, if you care about your friends, don't do that to them. So there's plenty. If it needs to be a little bit smaller, make it a little bit smaller. I'd rather play for 20 people than 25 if I'm increasing the risk to my fan or friend.
So I've got a question that came from the audience when we started. I want to ask this one and then talk about some other stuff. So how do you handle kind of collecting email addresses in the room, and kind of what's the relationship between that and your merch when you're playing a house concert? Talk about that a little bit if you would.
Well, one of the things about house concerts is you can actually often command a little bit more for your CDs. You're playing you might be playing for an older crowd, so you can actually command a little bit more for your CDs. You're going to be able to shake people's hands, get to know them a little bit, and it's a much more effective way to get people to sign up on your mailing list. When you have sort of that intimacy, everybody gets a chance to talk with you because there's not 50 people online, there's just a handful. And plus, people, if you're doing 2 sets, they can talk to you on the break or after the show, and sometimes even before the show. One of the things that we see artists have success with is if you've got 2 or 3 CDs, always offer a quantity discount if they're willing to buy, get 3 CDs for the price of 2. There's often the desire to buy more than 1 CD. Often they'll buy everything that you have at a house concert. So we say price high and offer incentives rather than trying to price low. And then shake hands, be friendly, inquire about them, and hand them the mailing list. Don't wait for them to pick it up. Hand it to them. And as you'll see on the form in the download, you can create a little box at the end. Say, would you be interested in hosting a house concert? And they can circle yes, circle no, or they're right there in front of you. They can say, what's a house concert? And then you can gleefully explain to them, well, here's what we can do. I can come to your house and do a show in your living room. So I mean that's something that would obviously work at a club. If you're already at a house concert, they're going to know what they're going to know what they're signing up for.
One of the coolest things about the music industry today is how easy it is to break out of the box and find your own unique niche strategy, your own success strategy. And Fran is sharing, his strategies for success, hard won out on the road. And he broke out of the box and found something that worked for him. And there's a lot of creative options for gigging these days. And I made it part of my mission to go out and talk to people that are doing things differently. And Shannon Curtis was on a webinar a while ago, very successful with house concerts. She's just written about it. Maybe we'll have her back on here again. Ari Hershand is a completely DIY artist that really cracked the code to booking and promoting regional gigs on an independent level and getting very good at that. And some of those strategies, can work at the club level, but also at the house concert level. I've interviewed a couple of DJs that Hapa is from LA, and he's worked his way up through the club scene. And he's really shared with us a lot of tips to get your foot in the door at the local market. And Josh Andres, I don't know if you saw that one, but Josh had really great ideas of how to collect people in the room and get them to follow you online and support you, long after the show. So, you probably are here because, you're attracted to this idea of house shows and you want to book more gigs and book house concerts, as I've been corrected, and you want to make more money, and because you want to turn your music into a career. And I hope the information that Fran is sharing is helping you, and I hope that you have some more questions to ask. So I want to ask you to consider taking the next step in your career and checking out the New Artist Model. It's an online music business program especially designed for indie musicians. And a lot of what we're talking about tonight, these are the kind of things that we talk about in the course. This is what you'll explore. And in the end, you're going to be able to stop wondering what you should be doing and create a plan that will help you get to where you want to go. The other thing about New Artist Model, and many of you on the chat are members, and hello, thank you for coming. We're also a community of artists all around the world, all helping each other and striving for success. And if you sign up for the program, you get access to this community. And believe me, people are really helping each other. There's a tremendous amount of value in there. So for watching this webinar, we're going to give $100 off the New Artist Model. Normally $497, you can get it for $397. Use the coupon code HouseConcert when you check out. There's the link on the screen, newartistmodel.com essential. Follow that, and you'll be able to get a discount on the course. New Artist Model contains hundreds of training modules, many like this, but lots of more interactive and in-depth interviews with folks that'll help you manage your time, get more done, book more gigs, get more fans, sell more music, get licensing, find sponsorships, manage your money, and a whole lot more. So I encourage you to check it out. There's a 7-day money-back guarantee, so if you check it out and it's not for you, you just email me. I'll give you your money back, no problems and no questions asked. What you get with this program is, imagine if you took the New Artist Model and you looked back in a year and you understood the music business better than you do now, and you understand your place in it, and you learn how to manage your time and build a team. And you learn strategies like this house concert strategy for getting more gigs and selling music merch and tickets, finding sponsors. Imagine a year from now, you've put a plan together, you've created, a very solid audience, you got some sponsorship, and you're moving ahead. This is what the program is really all about. Now, some folks have been generous to share their thoughts. New Artist Model is really packed with a lot of information and videos. We're constantly adding material to it. It's full of very practical tips and strategies that work, that are proven to work, and you'll hear from a lot of the folks exactly their stories of what's worked and what hasn't. And as I said earlier, a community. Now, why would you do this? It's really to understand what you're doing, what your unique career is going to be all about, and how do you start to accomplish the goals that you have for yourself. So check it out if you will. You can save $100 off using the coupon code HouseConcert when you check it out. And now, I got a bunch of questions that we got from when folks signed up. Okay. Let's start with, you touched on sort of liability issues, but folks are concerned about liability and safety. We got a lot of questions about that. How do you handle the liability issues?
Well, a house is, by law, typically insured. Homeowners insurance will cover someone if they're having a party, right? If you have friends come over and watch the Super Bowl, something happens, you're covered on the insurance by your homeowner's insurance. And that's why it's one of the several reasons why it's really critical that house concerts be private events and that they be non-commercial on the part of the host. So if the host is taking a percentage, then they're acting like a business. It doesn't matter if they're just trying to cover their costs. It doesn't matter if they're profitable or not. If they're taking any of the money, that can be deemed a commercial activity on their part. So hands off the money, keep it private. So those are two big things in terms of safety. But anytime you have a party at your house, anytime you have 30 or 10, 15, 20, 30 people in your home, there's an elevated risk of somebody falling and hurting themselves. So that's part of living. We can't live in our shells, and people like to have parties. People like to have gatherings in their homes, and a house concert is no exception to that. In terms of safety, personal safety, as an artist in someone else's home, if you're uncomfortable around dogs, if you have a tendency to get bit, or if you're allergic to cats, you want to have that conversation with the host if you're going to be spending any amount of time there. In terms of safety, staying overnight, I think that, once again, that's one of the advantages of playing concerts that are part of a network like ours, where everybody's vetted. They're not only vetted on their way in, but they're also vetted by every artist who plays there before you. So that adds another dimension of safety. And then the other side of it is just vigilance. It's just, travel in pairs and, get to know that host on Facebook and, have a conversation on the phone, and just, if the vibe is creepy or you just don't feel right about it, don't go, So, but, these are rarities. Again, we do almost 2,000 events a year around the world. And in 9 years, we've had barely any problems at all. Certainly nothing major. So, but that speaks to having a network.
So I'm going to respond to a comment that just came in. Hands off the money. What's in it for the host? How do you look at that?
Yeah, it's funny. We consistently run into people who just don't understand how much people love music and love the arts. And believe it or not, if you look around, people volunteer for stuff all the time. People volunteer for things that bring meaning into their lives, and house concerts are a hobby. And if you're collecting airplanes, if you're whatever hobbies you have, they require some effort and some investment oftentimes. If you're brewing beer at home or making wine, actually we have several house concert hosts who make their own wine, and they marry both hobbies together. So it's if you listen to the news a lot, you tend to hear a lot of the negative stuff. But I can tell you from where I sit, there's some amazing, kind, generous people in this world. And when you offer, not when you ask, but when you offer to bring beautiful music in a remarkable way into their living room for them and their friends, they look at it as a labor of love, and they do all this work for the artist because they want to support it, and they get something out of doing that. And it doesn't have to be money.
So I've got a couple other questions kind of related to the set that you're playing. How dynamic is that? Do you do requests? How much of a dynamic environment do you want to create versus coming in there and playing your set and blow them away? What's your take on that?
Well, I think every artist has to find their own way through that, because I think everybody's different, and some people are better at telling jokes. Hell, some of them are better at telling stories and singing songs, and some people who attend house concerts often will tell you that their favorite part is the stories between the songs. So every artist kind of has to do their own evaluation of what's working for them. But a house concert is a great place to start opening up and telling people where you're from, what inspired that song, why it means something to you. And I want to mention something really important, and this applies to you whether you're playing in a house or in a club. When you set up a song, don't tell them what the song is going to tell them. Add a dimension to it, add a teaser, add a cliffhanger, something. But if you've already given away the punchline in the setup, you're sucking the energy and the life out of your song. We see so many artists do this. It's just like, this is a song about a girl that broke up with me and how I got even. And it's just, all right, well, now the whole time, first verse 1, verse 2, we know you're going to get even, you know? And it's just like, there's no surprise. So be careful, you know, don't miss the opportunity to add a new dimension to the songs. You know, that verse that you had to take out because it made the song too long or whatever, you know, here's your chance to say, you know, I can tell that little story now. So use that. And then also the stuff in between songs is a great way to balance out the vibe of your show. Man, if you sing a lot of ballads, you need to find a way to get people's energy up. And that can be a great place to throw in a cover. If you're incapable of writing groovy, or if, let's say your groovy, upbeat songs are just not your best, fine, throw in a cover. Use a cover song to cover for your weaknesses. You know, it's a great way to think of what a cover song should be. It's covering for what's missing in your show. And the pattern in between songs, if you're singing a bunch of depressing songs, you better tell some jokes. You know, find some levity, find something to make people smile, to get them out. You don't want your show to be an emotional or rhythmic rut, you know? So, and there's a lot of artists out there who do really well. They do one thing really, really well, and they do it over and over and over, and they have success with it. But when you are playing in this intimate environment, it's like, it's licensed to just do something totally different to break that up a little bit. Even if it's not through music. It can be through a joke, a story, getting everybody to do jumping jacks, whatever.
Okay, here's a question from James. James, I hope you're still here. Should you expect to take a loss financially from travel, lodging, food if doing them over one day's drive from your home? And if so, how long to take the loss before turning down shows? So talk a little bit about sort of the break-even or profitability potential of house concerts and how you manage that.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question, because I remember early in my career, I would drive from Tampa to Charleston, South Carolina to play for $150. Like, there was no way I could make money doing that trip, and I did it over and over again just because I like Charleston. And I didn't have a better gig in town at that particular time. So you've got to decide why you tour, you know, and you may be in a situation where you love to play so much, and money is not really one of your big hassles. You know, maybe you've got a day job and you make plenty of money doing that, and you still manage to find time to create great art, and you can take, you know, a weekend or a summer tour and go hit the road and not be all that stressed out about making money. So everybody's got to approach this their own way. But I think that if you are trying to grow a music career, you not only want to grow financially, but you want to grow your fan base. And I think for me, if I'm going to go play in a region and be likely to lose money at it, I'm not going to do that a lot. And I'm gonna evaluate that trip and say, you know, how many emails did I gather? Did I get some potential house concert hosts on for the next trip? Did I create any relationships that are worth going back for, even at a loss or at a small profit? But you want to, you always want to think about growth, and growth doesn't always have to be financial, but do a strict accounting of what you're in this for and what you need to make it worthwhile.
So a couple questions about concerts in your home in particular. If you would give us just a quick overview of what Concerts in Your Home is again, and then here's the first question, is how do you guys vet hosts specifically to ensure that the artist is walking into a safe or reasonable situation? That's from Sarah.
All right. Well, the brief overview of Concerts in Your Home, the simplest way to describe it is we're kind of like eHarmony for house concerts. So the hosts join and they create a profile that describes their musical interests and describes the space that they have and the accommodations and whether or not they have pets and the types of shows that they like to do and the nights of the week that they're open to do it. The artists join and they create an artist profile that has, 3 songs, videos, bio, pictures, and all that kind of stuff. And then the platform allows both sides to reach out to each other. But as you would imagine, most of the reaching out happens from the artists to the hosts. And so as a member, as an artist member of Concerts in Your Home, you would, if you're planning a tour of the Midwest, you would search for hosts in Ohio and Michigan and Indiana and look at the individual profiles, see if they're a good fit for what you do, and if they've got room in their schedule, and then you send them a booking request with potential dates that you'd like to fill when you're going through that area. And most of the bookings happen 4 to 8 months out. That's kind of like the sweet spot. I'm sure that if you Google house concerts, you're going to find some of the most popular series in the world, and a lot of those book 12 to 18 months out. But on average, on our website, it's between 4 and 8 months, and we see plenty of new hosts who get started, and they'll book their first show 6 or 8 weeks later. So there's always sort of new blood joining. So that's how that works. In terms of vetting artists, it's pretty challenging to get in. We have a paid audition process. We've invested a lot of money and effort in creating a system where when an artist applies to join, they give us 2 videos on their website, and those get evaluated by a minimum of 4, but usually like 5 or 6 people, and at least half of them will be active house concert hosts. So because membership to Concerts in Your Home, it's $300 a year for the artists. And even though they can make that money back in a single show, I don't want to take $300 from somebody who doesn't have a good chance of getting gigs. So the application process lets us not only evaluate their marketing materials, which would be, because keep in mind, the video is not just for you to inspire the host, but it's also to allow the host to inspire their friends to attend. So that's why the videos are so critical. They want to know that they've got something good that their friends are going to be interested in applying it. And if they just say this guy's great, and nobody can check them out, then it's just not going to be as fruitful for them. But so the artists have a pretty cool application process where they whether they get invited to join or not, they're going to get detailed feedback from everybody who evaluated them. So comments on video 1, comments on video 2, on their website, and so if you don't, whether you get invited or not, you get this really good feedback about which videos are working, why they're not, why they're working and why they're not, why your website is hurting you more than helping you. Believe it or not, it's amazing how often we see websites that like we can tell the artist is good, the musicianship is good, but it looks like the website hasn't been updated in 15 years, and it makes them look bad. It makes them look like they don't care about their art. So your website is really critical in terms of shaping people's opinion about what you do. So website, 2 strong videos. That's how we evaluate the artists. And then with the hosts, we have a couple of things that they go through in terms of learning what's expected of them. The various different types of programs that we didn't get to, but you'll see them in the guide. The 10-10 concerts, which is what we recommend everybody try. 10 songs for 10 or more guests is basically the thing there. So we ask them to start small so that if the show doesn't work out, the artist isn't losing $400 or $500 on a Saturday night. It's, it was a show where they expected $100 or $200 and it didn't work out as planned. So we encourage them to start small. We give them a lot of training. We, they have a guide that they can download, and we have a personal conversation with just about every host that signs up. So it can take weeks before a host gets approved to be on our site, and we often will connect them with an experienced artist for their first show before we sort of throw them to the wolves for all the other artists to approach them. So we take a lot of care, but no, we don't do background checks. We don't check if there are any sex offenders in their neighborhood. All that kind of stuff is, that's just part of the world. And again, it's the value of being in a network where you can wait and let somebody else check out that host before you go there. If you feel uncomfortable about that situation. But again, we've been doing this for 9 years. We've not had a serious incident. So I think that's a testament to how we do things.
Very good. Bill asks, how far in advance must one book a house concert? You've sort of danced around that a little bit, but how far in advance should you be planning?
Well, I think the sweet spot on our website is 4 to 8 months out. But if you're approaching your fans, 2 to 4 months out would probably be ample. That all just depends on what the gaps are in your schedule and how far ahead you like to book stuff as an artist. So if you go to a website like Home Roots, they're a Canadian company that have like house concert circuits around Canada. They're kind of old school. You have to send them a CD, but they book 6 to 9 months, or actually almost a year ahead. So 9 months to a year ahead with Home Roots. But with us, each artist kind of has their own standards and their own needs, and we've seen shows get booked 3 days out sometimes, just because the right artist will ask at the right time.
Okay, we got 1 or 2 more questions. Several folks have asked about, okay, I'm not an acoustic act, I'm a 4-piece band, I like to play the drums, or, I'm a more aggressive sound. How do folks kind of like that approach this opportunity? Do they play outside in the yards, or what are your suggestions for that kind of approach where there's a drum kit for sure, and it tends to get maybe a little more chaotic and edgy and loud?
Right, and that's for that kind of music. That's why the clubs are great. They're built for that kind of thing. And while it is true that there are some hosts who are willing to do that, they're the exception rather than the rule. I think you not only look at the energy of the show, but the type of crowd that's going to come to the show and the culture around that show. If you're going to have a mosh pit, it's who wants that in their house? I'm sure there are people that would want that in their house, but I certainly wouldn't recommend it. So I think that it's a matter of figuring out what your best play is for the type of music that you do. And I know that I have no business playing at a hard rock club that's that's expecting a high energy show, and you've got to find the places where your energy is best spent. And so it's not a matter of you cannot do house concerts. I'm sure you can find people that will do it, especially within your fan base. But I would, if I were you, I would do my best to take care of my friends' liabilities. And certainly, I would. Some people have a basement, and they'll do whatever they want down there. But I'd say you really want to be thinking about your friends' safety, not just in terms of insurance and people getting hurt, but also, if you got a rock show, you're more likely to have noise complaints, and the cops come, and then who knows what the cops find. So there's all kinds of all the little problems become big problems when you try to put a hard rocking band, into somebody's house.
Good advice. So we told you that we'd be sharing a free ebook for everyone who's stuck around. Thank you so much. Here you go, concertsinyourhome.com/eguide.html. That will give you your free ebook courtesy of Concerts in Your Home. And as I said earlier, we have 50 spots open for new artist model at a discount. You can use the coupon code HouseConcert when you check out. Go to newartistmodel.com/essential. Thank you, everyone, for coming, and thank you, Fran, for your time.
Can I mention one more thing? Because I didn't want to end on a downer there.
Yes, sir.
Sure. So I want to be careful to mention that the stuff in the book that you're going to download is independent of Concerts in Your Home. You do not have to join Concerts in Your Home to benefit from what's in the guide. I focus a lot on helping you inspire your fans and kick around different ideas to make each show more memorable, more profitable, and also different formats that can appeal to different people in your fan base. So I just want people to know that even though we're the biggest website, most active website for house concerts, we're still a thumbnail of what is happening out there. And most house concerts happen direct to fan. So don't underestimate the possibility of inspiring your fans to host shows. And again, they can download our guide to help you out, and you don't have to join anything to do that. But if you're interested in Concerts in Your Home, of course, we're there.
Thank you, Fran. Everybody, say goodnight to Fran.
Good night, everybody.
And thank you all for coming. We'll see you around next time. Thank you. Thank you, Fran.